Julian Kulski was born in 1929 in the Żoliborz district of Warsaw. He was the son of the capital's vice president during the war. Kulski was an active member of the underground institutions and fought for the Polish freedom from his early years. He currently lives in Virginia, United States. He's an architect and an activist of the Polish diaspora. He's the author of the book The Legacy of the White Eagle and the Color of Courage.
Let us say a few words about present-day Polish Americans. The history of Polish immigration to the United States reaches the very beginning of the English presence in Northern America. The large part of Poles arrived in the last quarter of 19th century and obviously in the 20th century. Right now, if you look at the Polish society here in America, which social strata is associated with Poles?
To start with, nobody really knows, including my wife, that Poles arrived in Jamestown in the 19th century, in 1708. That they were tar makers, they were glass makers, and they had the first strike in the United States. That's a fascinating history, and American children should learn about it. They are learning about the Irish, they are learning even about the Italians, and about Jews, about all other nationalities, but they don't know little detail like that, which is very important. Then during the 19th century, end of the 19th century, it was an economic, and they were mistreated like all the immigrants to America, the Irish, the Jews at first, some of that has remained. The Polish jocks, the Polish jocks, for example, they're still leftovers. But there's a number of reasons. The individual Americans, my friends, including Jewish Americans, are very pro-Polish and very supportive. And this is the thing that bothers me. That, but after decades of bad propaganda, they truly believe that Poles are more anti-Semitic than anybody else.
So what should we do to change that perception?
Well, that's what public relations and are for. They are for in order to get to schools, to universities, to government, to the Senate, to the same about the Polish truth. Now I hear about it in Poland, that this is the most important thing for the present government, but I don't see the action. There's a lot of talk about it, but there's very little action. So far, they've hired a few speechwriters for presidents who have no contacts with American media, television or radio or any other mass. So if they write something, it's never published. You need a firm of lawyers and public relations. Lawyers are responsible to lobby on the Hill to make sure the Polish interests are represented in the Senate and Sejm of the United States. Public relations are equally responsible because they get to the mass of Americans who vote in the representative, the senators. So the Senate and Sejm, just by having support of the lobbying, and not having the support of the states, we're not going to do it. Both of them have to be done simultaneously.
And it should reach out to the Americans who have no connection with Poland, who are not even Europeans. Just
exactly. It should be addressed to America. I know that whenever Polish ambassadors are sent to Washington, the president and the premier convinces them that they are going to be representative of Poland to America and not to Polonia. But they all, without an exception, find that dealing with Polonia is a lot easier and possible, while without the professional assistance, they could do it if they had the firms. But alone, they're just left in the desert.
You mentioned the sympathy that Poland had in American South in the 19th century and early 20s. Is that still so, or it just vanished?
Well, it was when I arrived in this country 70 years ago. I went down from England to Tuscaloosa, Alabama. And the parents of my best friends there and colleagues knew everything about Pan Zagłoba, about Pan Sienkiewicz, about Pan Wołodyjowski. I was so surprised, but evidently the Sienkiewicz was translated, and all of them learned in school. Today, Americans don't know anything about Sienkiewicz or about Polish literature. It's a pity. It's really a crime.
Okay. Should we use the Polonia group better to spread out the news about Poland among Americans?
As I said, Polonia will follow. Polonia is not the problem. Polonia will be very happy to help, but it needs to have they are all busy. They're either making a career themselves, and they don't have the time, just like the ambassador and that is too busy with the details of diplomacy to do public relations.
Right. This should be done on some much more professional
Yes,
way than it is. I wanted to ask you about this 447 Act that has been issued a year ago in the American Congress, and it concerns the uninherited properties in another country, and claims that it should be listed at least and maybe possibly transferred to the foundations that take care for Holocaust victims and take care about Holocaust remembrance. Obviously, accidentally, these foundations are based in the United States, and this is a big concern in Poland because we are talking about 4 national budgets of the country.
No, it's impossible. It's impossible. Well, all of this was settled in the early 60s between Poland and the United States. But again, I just came across the agreement by accident. Why not publish it? Why not publish it in every newspaper in America and talk about it? I mean, and hire lawyers. It's talking about law. It's the lawyers who are attacking us, and you need good lawyers, first-rate lawyers to fight. Possibly Jewish lawyers, because they're the best. And you know, that's another thing that I hear about criticism from the Polish government, that if we hire the wrong firm, it's going public relations, they will do more harm than good. Well, it all depends on the conditions of the contract and the supervision of the contract.
That's correct.
And not the nationality or religion of the members of the American firm.
So we are returning to the point that there should be some well thought and coordinated, proactive activity in the terms in the area of public relation for Poland, and we still are learning how to do that.
And we have a very good Polish public relations firm. I employ one of them in Warsaw. They are excellent. They've done a great job for me throughout in Europe and in the United States. And they could work together with an American firms, just as well as the government.
So we keep fingers crossed that Polish government will do the right thing finally.
Well, I don't know what's needed to do it. I think there is need for public relations on the subject in Poland, so that the Polish citizens will force the government to do it. And there's very few articles or anything in the radio and television to saying how it should be done. And they need help, because really some of it is ignorance and not bad will.